All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on this webinar today. We're going to be reviewing auto freight parts today. Hopefully, you guys can hear me okay. If you are having any trouble hearing me, please chat in and let me know. I have you guys on speakerphone today. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Hopefully, everyone's doing well and staying safe and healthy. But I'm glad you guys could join us. Why are we doing this? Auto freight parts, one of the most frequently missed line items when preparing a quote is freight. So it just immediately creates that margin erosion and immediately decreases your profit margin. So it's one of the easiest things to set up in eManage, and it's fairly new. So some of you guys have been with us for a while. You may not have your freight part set up, so we definitely encourage you to do so. It's going to save you a ton of time because it's going to automatically add to your bill of materials if you set up those freight parts on your vendor records. And on top of that, it's also going to auto calculate the freight. So if you have those freight terms set up with your manufacturer, you want to set those up, and it's going to just help prevent those miscalculations, which will obviously help prevent margin erosion. So, pretty simple, straightforward. The how we're going to review today, but we are going to review how to add a freight part. But what I'd like to mention here at the beginning is it doesn't have to be just on those vendors that you have freight terms set up with. If you know that that vendor is going to charge you freight, even if it's a vendor that is going to charge you freight or quote you freight, and you're not necessarily, you don't know that information up front, and you have to send a quote off, you want to add this freight part to every single vendor that you know for sure is going to charge you freight. And it just reminds your users to stop and think about it. And that's the best thing that we can do is just stop and think about it. And, we understand everything's always moving very fast. You've got to get these quotes out. That's why if you stop and put these freight parts together, your users will see that it's just automatically going to add onto your bill of materials so that you can at least stop down and think about it, add it on. It's better to, add on a freight part than get hit with the freight, when the bill comes in and now you just, dropped your profit margin because you just didn't even stop to think about it. So those are the reasons why. We're going to go ahead and get started and show you how. This one should be pretty quick and painless. All right, so inside of your main application, so this is technically something that anyone can do if you have the ability to edit vendor records. Anyone can do that, so don't rely on just one person. You want to be able to work as a team and get these freight parts set up for every vendor that would charge you freight. Get it over with, get it done, and like I said, it's going to save you a ton of time. It saves you the time from adding the actual part in, and obviously that margin erosion. Just so you guys know, if you're looking at my screen right now and wondering why this might look so different, you guys are getting the first sneak peek of the latest update for eManage. This is still planning to be released at the end of the month, but yeah, you guys are getting the first sneak peek. I'm not going to go over that today. We will have a webinar in more depth on all the new things coming out in the upcoming release. So just FYI, you are getting a sneak peek, so kind of exciting. So first things first, to set that up, you're gonna go into your vendor record. Again, any vendor who charges you freight. So I'm just gonna use 9 to 5 as the example here. So you go down to search, type in 9 to 5 under your companies and contacts, pull up your vendor record. Okay, what you'll do is down here at the bottom, so what it'll look like before you get in is something like this. It'll be blank down here at the bottom. This is your whole auto freight part setup at the bottom. So the very first thing that you'll do is click vendor charges me freight. Okay, so you're just letting the system know this vendor does charge me freight. Okay. The second checkbox, set vendor to me, what that is in your database, you should already have a generic freight part. If you do not have a generic freight part already set up and you need some more assistance doing that, please let me know. I'm not going to go over how to actually set up that part in this one, but what that's doing is your generic freight part is connected to your actual dealership. typically. So you have a freight part that's connected to your own dealership. So for me, marketplace software, I'm telling it to use this freight part, so my generic freight part, on every single time that anyone adds a part into their bill of materials for 9 to 5, no matter how they add it. Copy paste from the project matrix button, manually. If it recognizes that the part is connected to 9 to 5 seating, it's going to throw this freight part onto the quote, and it's going, because I checked set vendor to me, it's going to flip it from marketplace software to whoever the manufacturer is. So you only need to set up one freight part, and you can use that one generic freight part on all of your vendors, on all the setups. Then what you'll do is select your auto part phase. If you don't already have one, which you should, if you don't already have one, what you'll do is just hit new. You'll name it freight, okay? And you'll see in my drop down here, I have some new numbers next to some of my different, my phase names. That's your prioritization. So if you want to prioritize the way that it actually prints on your quote, typically, you know, standard for the industry, you got all your products up top, then you have your, maybe your freight, then your delivery and install, whatever that order is for your dealership, you know, set those priorities up by just putting a number, a closed parentheses, and a space. So again, a number, closed parentheses, space, and then what you want the phase name to read. Okay. You can also do a description if you want to, which it'll just print right next to the phase name on the quote. And then what I highly suggest is changing the phase quantity to 1 and your phase unit of measure to each. And that's just, again, another industry standard that we're seeing is the freight is lumped up into one line. So instead of showing, okay, I have a freight charge from 9 to 5 and a freight charge from Hayward and a freight charge from AIS, it's just going to show the customer one each and the total amount, the total sale. Just, you know, one of those things, they just want to know what the overall freight is usually. Okay, so what you'll do is then hit save, and then you'll have that option in your auto part phase. Again, you should probably already have one, so if you do have one that is labeled freight, definitely choose that. The only time that you'll ever, while I go through these settings, some exceptions here, the only time that you'll uncheck vendor charges, uncheck set vendor to me is if you have a manufacturer that you know that you are being charged freight, but maybe it's a third party freight carrier. So what you'll do is set up their own freight part specific to that freight, that third party vendor, and then you'll use that one here. And then instead of checking set vendor to me, it'll know automatically, because of the part you chose, to automatically set it to whoever that third party is. Okay. One thing to note, when setting up that generic freight part, just a side note, if you don't already have one, you must set the cost and the list to $1. And then you can set the customer price. So what I mean here, just go ahead and show you guys real quick. View, part listing window, and I'm just going to search for that generic freight part. And there it is there. So what I'm referring to is the cost in the list should be set to 0. And then you can up the customer price if you'd like to set a margin on it. What it's going to do, what you'll see momentarily, when you add it on to the bill of materials, it's automatically going to adjust the cost, but it'll also adjust the customer price as well with that markup if you do markup freight. Some do, some don't. Again, if you need some assistance on setting up that freight part, please let me know. Okay, so you'll choose your auto part phase, and then you get into the nitty-gritty, the details of what those freight terms are with the manufacturer. So talk about saving time. You know, you guys go in probably to your, you know, your vendor book, however you're keeping that data, and you're looking up, okay, what are the freight terms? And every time, and a lot of you probably have that stuff memorized for your big ones, but on all those little ones, you have to go through and look and find what our freight terms are, or possibly forget to even add it onto your quote. This is going to help with that. So what those freight terms are, just set that up. So what this means is if they do a minimum charge, you'll put in your minimum charge there. So I'm going to do an example with a ceiling and a calculation. So let's say, and these are probably not right, but just as an example, let's say for 9 to 5, after 5,000 lists, it's no longer going to be a charge for freight. So that's what a ceiling is. So I can do 5,000, and then but I can do it on list cost or weight. So whatever your terms are. And then I'm going to say if it's under 5,000, they're always going to charge me 3% of list. But you can always, again, choose list cost or weight. So it's that simple. Setting that up, looking it up. It is going to take some time to set them up. But once it's set up, what you do, go into your bill of materials on your new hamburger menu. So inside your project, in the bill of materials, I've already kind of set up an option here. And let's say I am a user who does some quoting and I want to set, I want to add a 9 to 5 chair on here. What I'll do is come in here, just find my part. However, again, however that is that you're adding it, if it's a copy paste or from the clipboard manager, from your project spec button, doesn't really matter, from your actual existing list of parts is how I'm doing it right here. So I'm grabbing this Bella chair and I'm hitting +1, and what you're going to see up top is that chair gets added in, but it automatically adds my freight phase that I told it to lump into one line because of that phase quantity, that phase unit of measure, one each. I didn't put a description on it, but if you want to, you could double click and add a description or add it at the front end so you don't have to keep doing it every time. But what it did was it auto-calculated the 3% of the list. You can see here 245. It is going to look a little bit different than what you might be used to whenever you are quoting freight. What it's doing is taking that amount that is going to be charged by the manufacturer and putting it in the quantity and multiplying that by the cost. So it's telling it that it's $7.35. I've been playing with this a little bit, so I'm not sure. It should automatically, based off of what you have set up on that generic freight part, it should automatically bump that up if you put a margin on that customer sale price. If anybody's having any trouble with that, if you do mark up your freight, please let me know. Otherwise, you'll see here in just a moment. So let's say that now the quantity is going to exceed the list price of that $5,000 ceiling that I put on there. You see, I just changed the quantity to 100 to exceed that list price, and it just automatically removed my freight phase and the freight line itself. Pretty simple, pretty magical. So what you'll do, there's a couple of other little scenarios. So let's say that what I was talking about earlier about adding it on to every manufacturer, if you know that they're going to charge you freight, let's say you don't know what those freight terms are. You can leave all of these at 0. Save, yes. Let's save this. And then let's change this back. And what it does is it's still going to add that freight line on for you. Set the vendor to 9 to 5, so you don't forget to flip that. But it's just going to put it in as a quantity of 0. And then now I can come in here and say, you know what? They're going to charge me $50 for freight. You see it automatically bumped it up. Also, whenever you go to add multiple manufacturers, so let's say now I'm going in and I'm going to quote something for Hayward. Let's add a Zodi here. You're going to see that it's going to, and I already had the freight term set up with Hayward on the Hayward vendor record. So you can see here it's putting it into the same freight phase. So it's still lumped up, and that's all the client's going to see is a freight charge, one each, at a total sale of blank. Pretty simple. So that is how you set up the freight. There may be, you know, some manufacturers that you have like a small order fee, human scale, maybe that's a small order fee, things like that. If they only do that and not freight as well, you can set those small order fees as well. So maybe your minimum charge is just $50. If there's no cap, and then if there's a cap, you know, after a certain amount of dollars, that $50 comes off. That's where you'll set up that type of small order fee. And you can even have this as, you know, a phase of its own small order fee if you don't want it to read as freight. Questions? Charge isn't a percentage, Alyssa, but rather flat charge. Yeah, Janine, so the flat charge, you could use the minimum charge for that. Oh, per chair, she clarifies, per chair. Yeah, that's a bit different. You know, these freight terms are really pretty simple. As you can see, it's the standard freight fees that you see from those bigger manufacturers. On some of those manufacturers that have, you know, different freight based off of different things, that's going to be a little bit more difficult, or should I say, well, it's impossible to set up that way with this particular setup. But in that certain case, I might say, okay, I'm going to do a $0 across the board and at least have it add on to the bill of materials. That way your users are at least thinking about it. You're welcome. Yvonne, if we remove the part line, will the freight be deleted automatically? Technically, yes, it should. So let's, I was playing with it earlier and I was having an issue, so I already have my development team looking at it. So I'm just deleting this part, and you can see the freight for 9 to 5 is still staying on there. So that's a little tricky right now, but I would imagine he's working on it already, and if it's easier, then I hope that it's an easy fix, and it will probably be out in this next update because that's kind of a big deal. You know, at some point it was working just fine, so I'm sure it's a quick flip back to the original. Good questions. Feel free to chat in any questions, or if you want to unmute yourself. Otherwise, this video will be posted on our YouTube channel so that you can reference back. Always, these are going on our YouTube channel. Still working on some quick, short how-to videos. But yes, the webinars always go on our YouTube video for you to go back and reference. So don't ever feel like you have to take notes and stuff during these. You can go back and reference it. All right, no questions coming in. Hope you guys found that helpful. If there's anybody that needs any help with any of this, please reach out to me. If you're having any issues or you just have a question on how to set up a particular freight term, whatever that might be, just reach out to us. That's what we're here for. Hope you guys are all staying healthy and safe during this very strange time. Webinar invite for the feature release coming out at the end of the month will be taking place next Wednesday. You should see an invite coming out today or tomorrow. Hope you guys can join in on that to see some of the exciting changes. All right, I'm gonna let you guys go, get back to it. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you guys.